all you scholars. Today I'm reviewing a game for the OSR, the Open Study Room Champion. There's a league in the OSR, and PillACHill won his division. And as a prize, they asked, well, he wanted his games reviewed. So they asked if I could do it, and I gladly accepted. So we're going to review two of his games. And we're already playing a correspondence game, so he's actually going to get a third review as well. But let's discuss this. So PillACHill mentioned to me that at his local Go club, there's a very strong player around 1Q who always plays 9-stone handicap against him, and he can't seem to beat his friend, right? He can't seem to beat his opponent. And then I got to see some of the games that he got to play. I don't know if these were OSR games. I believe they were, but they might not be. I know one of them was on Dragon server, so it might not actually be from the league. But these are the games he wanted reviewed, and they were both high handicap games, right? They were, again, stronger players with facing against 9-stones. I will commend the stronger players. I think they can handle handicap games pretty well because I'd be pretty overwhelmed myself playing against anybody with 9 stones. But I have uh, proven that usually when I play students for the first time, like who are around this level at 9 stones, I generally beat them the maybe first or second time, but then they get the hang of it. There's very specific rules I use when I'm the black player, and I've been teaching them to other double-digit Q students, and I've seen them significantly improve in their handicap. One of them, my student Marty, when we were playing regularly, he was very sharp and got me down to, I want to say, 5 stones. So you could see his improvement. He lost his first two games with 9 handicap against me, and then he worked his way down. But anyway, I've already opened this video enough, right? I've rambled on. Hopefully, it was entertaining. But let's get to the real review. So, handicap games are meant to teach the user how to fight. This is a very important concept to understand. Most people, when they start, they try and use their stones for territory. They try and use these stones for territory. But with all this power, the goal is to learn how to use it. So, with these handicap stones, I do not want you to think about too much about making territory. A big problem that all double digit Q players suffer is this bunkering down mentality, and it is not good. So let us continue. There are 3 rules I use to win handicap games, or to teach handicap games, right? One is to use your stones to keep pressure on your opponent. This understanding of always making your opponent uncomfortable is very important and very useful. When you have 9 stones, you should always be able to make your opponent uncomfortable, and we'll see through the game. Keep your opponent's stones separated. So, if you can keep your opponent separated, they will be weak, right? Which is good for you. And lastly, keep their group small. So if we keep these 3 rules in mind during our reviews for the next 2 reviews, you're gonna see patterns, right? Keep arising where when you break these rules, then it turns out bad, right? All right, so let's start. The first thing to understand is the rule number 1, right? Keep pressure on your opponent. This move in particular, B here, doesn't really put too much pressure on this stone. There is, right? White's still uncomfortable. But now White's next move is going to be here because White has the freedom to play another move. And so this starts to become a bit painful for Black already. So instead, I advise the kick. Now, I've already seen you in your next game use the kick and in my game against you, so I think you're well aware, but let's talk about why this is better, right? Compare this where White has to respond. If White was to play the same exact thing, well, now you get to hug the stone, and it is really good for you. Sorry, there was a mosquito in my room. I tried getting it. So this would be really good for black because you're just way stronger, and this stone is particularly weaker, and this stone doesn't have like a base or any infrastructure yet. So that's why white usually would respond by standing up. It prevents black from playing on top like this. Black jumps, which is starting to make an outline for a base, and then white jumps. And so this is good for black, right? If we just keep going like with moves, white is going to have to struggle to live while black maintains making points, right? So I'd play something like this, and white's going to have to try and make some type of shape, right? And while white's doing that, if you really want, well, I would keep the pressure up on white, of course. But if you wanted to, you could easily settle your stones, right? Settle your corner. All right. So ideally, if we're using rule number one, keeping pressure makes a lot of sense on your opponent. You're not allowing them to do what they want. You're forcing them to do what you want. So I like this move a lot. And mind you, if you go back to your even games and not handicap games, nowadays the computer says the kick's okay, but back before 2016, we usually didn't kick unless we had a stone here. Now that we have a stone here, which you will have in your high handicap games, right? You're always going to have a star point stone here. When you kick, you can see that white doesn't have a lot of room to run because this is here. If we took away the stone, then white would have a lot of room to run, right? White would be able to make a base pretty easily. So because we have this stone, that's why the kick's so good. So that's something to keep in mind as well, just in case we're going back to our even games. Though the computer says it's okay, so either way. So now, white is trying to make you uncomfortable, right? White's trying to take away your base and make you feel very small and uncomfortable. This brings us to our second, well, this is our first biggest no-no, right? Like I'd say this is the second mistake, but this is a real big no-no, which is called bunkering down. Trying to dig down is a bad habit. Every double-digit cube player starts with these habits, from what I've seen. You should use your, you should, you try to use your handicap stones for territory, right? You had the stone in the corner here, and so you think that this is your territory, and so then you try to use it for territory, right? But you need to use them to separate your opponent. Understanding that how to play using power is very important, and the idea is that if you separate white, so if it's black's next move, which it is, playing something like this or like this is it can get a little more complicated, right? But the idea is still the same. You can see that both A and B are becoming split apart, right? As long as black gets strong between them. This one is very easy to understand, a little less efficient, but it's still a good move. The idea is, once again, you're keeping A and B apart. And so when white tries to protect one, you can attack the other, right? You can harass the other. Um, or you can still harass them both, right? You could still uh, harass them both. I don't want to get into too specific of the variations. But I probably would have picked this one if you're wondering. Just because, what is white gonna do here, right? Like, let's say we block him, and then what? Is he gonna make a base? That's fine. If he makes a base, then we can come back and just take out this stone, right? We can push, we can jump. It's all good, right? Like I don't know what the most efficient move is, but I like kind of all of them, right? This would be really good for black. Once again, you're just keeping these two split and staying as strong as possible. And so this is much better than what happened in the game. We can immediately see what happens, right? You touched white. White got stronger. You attacked on this side, not splitting these two up, right? Once again, you should split them up. But once they connect, now they're actually very strong together. And you're bunkered down. You're making a very small amount of points. that I think later comes into question. It's either this game or the next game, but I remember some life and death stuff happens. So this is something you need to break the habit of. If you break this habit of not thinking about bunkering down, but thinking about separating your opponent, coming out into the middle, and keeping both of these sides weak, then you're going to become far stronger in your handicap games. Very, very significantly stronger. So really, really try and keep this idea in mind. We're going to see it time and time again, so hopefully the repetition will help you break that bad habit. All right, so, and just discussing quickly, once again, you had the option to break these two groups apart, right? White's not going to be able to connect these two groups. And so as he's trying to save one, the other one specifically gets weaker, right? The other group gets weaker. And so this is how Go kind of flows, right? Where when you separate your opponent, they have choices to save them, right? And you just follow along kind of with their choice, right? If they want to save this one, then you attack this one. If they want to save this one, then you can attack this one. So keeping your opponent separate, very important. That was rule number 2, if I remember. We could talk about this being a bad move. You don't want to play on the first line if you don't have to. If it doesn't involve life and death, it's generally much better to stay away from the first and second line. Coming up like this breaks this tiger's mouth, and it's helping you on the outside here. So this type of style would be really good. Um, but playing something like this, it allows white to hit you on the head, and now you're actually very close to dying. So hitting your head against the wall here takes away your liberties and doesn't really help you across the board. So this isn't a good move. Ideally, I'm assuming you didn't want white to come in here, right? Because now you're gonna white's gonna take some territory from you. But it's better to stay strong and in better shape. That's just a quick little tidbit. It's very important to understand. But I highlighted some of the more stuff that I thought would help you out. So be here. Understanding shape is very important. One thing I will say, and it's a little bit of a self plug. I don't really make money on YouTube anyway, so it's mainly to help people. But if we go quickly to YouTube, oops, sorry for making this a lot slower than I wanted it to be. But if we go to YouTube, I made like 6 or 7 classes covering the Making Good Shape book. So if you want to check out my YouTube, I'll have a link in the description. I highly advise watching the Good Shape Analysis playlist that I have going, because making good shape, we'll see here. Shape is so important to understand. It's a key concept for any Go player, right? This move makes an empty triangle, a famous bad move. So making good shape is vital to understand for any Go player. It gives you a lot of good intuition on where you should be looking first. It helps you avoid bad shape like this. So, two things that I could really go into detail about. And I guess when I'm teaching like people I've never taught before, I I I have to take a lot longer, right, for these reviews. So that because there's a lot to cover. So there's two things I want to cover. One is shape, and one is coming back to this bunkering down. Just one thing to understand about bunkering down, and I meant to teach this before, is that when you look at this, like I said, most people think that this is going to be their territory. But in most cases, you end up losing it, or it becomes way too small that it's insignificant. And the reason being is because you're playing a high stone, right? This is very high up off the ground. Now you're forced to play this way, right? You're forced to play 4 spaces up because it's handicap. But just understand that when white plays this, or anything really, you could lose your corner in an instant. This corner is not yours. When you're playing on the fourth line, the 4-4 star point like this, your focus for this stone is to make points this way, and this way. It's not actually focused to make points here. If you wanted to make points here, in your games where you're not forced to play here, this would be the move, playing on the 3-3. Because now the corner is yours. But once you play this, this corner can be ripped from you at any point. And so you have to get your mindset off thinking that this is your territory, because that's what's going to hinder you. Remember to keep your opponent separate. Remember to stay out, right? This is very important concepts. All right, sorry to backtrack like that. But that was extremely important to understand. Probably the most important thing you can learn from this lecture off the bat. Now for shape, yes. So I was going to talk quickly about the empty triangle. This is a very infamous bad shape. These 3 stones here, and there's a reason for it. That reason being is, let's take a look. So you only get one move at a time. And each one of these moves is very precious, right? It's very hard to get an advantage against your opponent when each turn you get to play and then your opponent gets to play. So the idea is to play as efficiently as possible. You need to try and strive to make your stones as much value as possible with each move. If you're not efficient, then you start becoming behind in points, and it's not good. So when we look at these shapes, right, just by counting the liberties, we can see which one's more efficient and which one's inefficient, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because this stone and this stone shares this liberty, that means that this is missing a liberty, right? It's inefficient, so it's only 7. Whereas this one is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 liberties. So this straight line is far more superior than this empty triangle. This is what's considered very bad shape. It's very infamous to be bad. There's time and a place to use it, but I want to stick to what you got, cause so I'm gonna skip when to use it. I guess I should show you, right, like, to be efficient. When to use it is like this. So um, let's say that we were in this situation like this, right? And so it's black's turn, and black wants to do his very best of splitting these 2 groups. Well, any other move that black plays will get thwarted, right? We'll see that white can like cut through, and there's problems. And so the key point here for black is to then make the empty triangle. So the empty triangle is mainly okay when it opens up cutting opportunities. That's essentially when the empty triangle is okay. Um, if this is too much information and it just spills out your head, I don't blame you, because we're getting really far into concepts. But these are very basic and fundamental concepts to understand. And so that's why I'm taking the time out of this lecture to really try and show you something. But anyway, efficiently, like for liberties and your shape and all that, this is very inefficient. But when you can use this to cut, that's usually the only time where the empty triangle is acceptable to play. So that's the whole spiel of the empty triangle. Hopefully, that taught you a little something. But yeah, see, so this shape right here, you have an empty triangle here. It's not actually here, it's here. And so this is a painful shape, right? It's known as bad shape. So to avoid it, we usually try and find ways to do our best to avoid it. The bamboo joint is a shape that's very good, right? It can't be broken, so that's nice. I like this one myself because this move is just going to affect more of the side compared to this one, right? This one affects more of this side, so I like that. And it still protects, right? We can see that black is protected. I really like this move. But this move is inefficient. So the idea is, let's say if like white played here, right? We could see that white can kind of mess up this area a little easier than if black was already here, right? If we had the same thing going, right? White can't go that far to damage this. This is as far as white goes, and it's pretty bad, right? So, small differences, but knowing shape is very important, and I highly advise you to check out my shape lectures. I went over a whole book in video format, so feel free to check that out. It should help you significantly. Let us go on. Move 26. Keep your stones connected. Okay. So for black, I was thinking that playing something like this would be better. Ideally, if you make a wall here, then it will help you for the rest of the board over here. Maybe it's not the best move. In fact, the computer kept wanting you to split these two apart. It really, really wanted you to play this move for the whole game, but I'll show you later when I thought it was the best part. But yeah, instead of playing this, because this might hurt your corner, it might get these killed, right? Instead of you playing this, I think it would be better to play from the corner more than the side, but we'll see. So white jumps, black jumps, white makes a base, white jumps, and now you have a kind of a big weakness here. Um, White can play here and split your stones up, right? As what happened in the game. And so my advice to you on a fundamental level, keep your stones connected, right? I know that you're worried about this group dying, but that's because you made a weak group inside his stuff, right? Um, so if we compare to something like this, like let's just say we played like pretty much the normal moves. Um, Black would be able to keep this stone light, right? Even if you stop here and like jump now, that's fine. But you'd be able to keep this stone light. But once you play this, it kind of makes it heavy. And there's really not that much space for black to make life in here. I wouldn't worry too much about it though. One of the main fundamentals to boil down to is just keep your stones connected, right? Keep them very well connected. So now we've come to another crossroad in your game. Like I'm just sticking to the most important stuff, not just every individual move. Like I don't know how I feel about these two moves in particular, but so like something more important might be to play something like this for me, because you can see this is connecting your stones and building like a moyo. But like I said, I won't speak directly on individual moves that don't look terrible. What I will speak to you on is the bigger concepts and moves that I think were like a little out of line, right? Um, Once again, you did the same thing here and here. Most people use the corner first, right? Like in this case, the best move honestly is to kick because you have the stone here, right? So you can put pressure on this, which is the first rule, right? Put pressure on your opponent. So this would probably be the best move. Um, but anyway, so this move I thought was really good. This is actually a very excellent move. If you're thinking about direction of play, right? This side of the board, you can't make a lot of points on. White's already here. Technically, you could attack this because it doesn't have two eyes yet, but ideally, if white was safe here, then you wouldn't make a lot of points this way. But on this side, you could make a lot of points, right? You have all your development here. And so I like the idea of playing A, which creates a wall, which then faces, this wall is facing to develop here. So I like that. But once you played this, this was bad. This goes back into the bunkering down shape. Let me just read what I wrote about this. I mean, I think I'm just going to repeat myself, but the attachment builds a wall. This was the right move, but you need to use the wall for power, not to bunker down in the corner. Right, so once you bunker down here, I think you were thinking about your points here, and that's not what you should do. Instead, when somebody hits you, you should get stronger. Because now you can see that this stone and these stones are getting separated, similar to what happened here in the opening. And once these two groups are separated, they become far weaker, right? So once you allowed white to get on top of you like this, and white should have probably played here, but either way, um, now you're falling into this corner mentality, right? And now you're getting a very small amount of territory. We don't use our handicap stones to build territory. We use our handicap stones to build power, which then in turn becomes a tax against our opponents, which then turns into territory. So it is a cycle. But yeah, we don't use it directly to like hide and make territory, right? This feels like you're hiding, and white got all the outside. He wrapped you up, right? And so this was bad. Now, mind you, you could have counterattacked here, but I can see how like messy or like worrisome this could be. You should be fine, but I could see how it could get a little complicated for you. But we should just fight this instinct immediately. Like, this is so important to understand. Rule number one, right, is not to bunker down into these corners like this, because now white's just strong. All right, I keep repeating myself, but it's important to understand these concepts, and they continuously keep happening, right? So that's why I keep repeating myself so much. Let's see. So this was pretty much fine until here. Um, Stay connected, right? We talked about how keeping your stones connected makes you a lot stronger, and allowing your opponent to split you apart makes you a lot weaker, right? And so we should be doing the opposite as well. We should be trying to split our opponents apart. But yeah, I would have definitely played here, because even if white plays something like this, you can fix, white fixes, and then we move on with the game. Then I would probably try and build this Moyo, or maybe I would try and attack this thing, right? Stay connected. And then the computer, as I said, the whole game wanted you to play this. This was the most important move to the computer, because you can see that you can split white, right? You can cut these two groups. And so this would be very strong. So the computer really wanted you to play something like this. All right, let us get back to the game. So yeah, allowing him to take this Panuki was so painful, because now you just have weaknesses everywhere, right? You got to fix a couple of them, but you still have a weakness here and here. So it would have been much better to just play this. Yes, it makes an empty triangle, but this is cutting a really important group, right? It's cutting these two groups. And so, very important cutting stones. So at this point in the game, this is the point where I really think this would have been probably the best time to cut here. Because when you played this move, you already have a weak stone or a group on the board. This group doesn't have a base, doesn't have two eyes. That means it's fairly weak, right? It has some strength and liberties, but it's weak in the sense that it's not settled. And so now you're creating a second weak group. So now you have both C and B here. Um, and so creating two weak groups is a big fundamental no-no, right? It's very bad to do that because now white's going to have the chance to attack both of you at the same time. Like this move here, this is what's called the splitting attack. And so now both of your groups become very vulnerable. I'm sure if white hugged this stone, it would have got a better result. So, white probably didn't play the most optimal way, but the idea still remains. You can see that this black group doesn't have two eyes yet and is almost fully surrounded by white. And this black group started getting surrounded, and you felt that, and so that's why you started making some eye shape and stretching around. And kudos for you for making two eyes. So that was cool. Let's see. And so now we're kind of getting to the end of my analyzation of this game. Because, one, I've already given you a lot of concepts, right, to think about. So, I don't want to overfill your brain. This is already a lot to think about. And if you take these to heart, you will become a much stronger player. If you learn shape, um, please do. There's many materials out there to learn Go shape. Um, I'm not too, I'm not gonna say mine's the best, but it does thoroughly cover it. It is really good, and I know it helped a lot of people. But there's plenty out there. There's like a famous one, I think Desan, made one like years and years ago, and a lot of famous players used it. But mine's more updated. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, feel from it. Yes, learn shape. Don't bunker down. This will already make you a lot stronger, and change your thinking of the game. Right? You gotta change your eyes and how you look at this game. Um, don't use your we'll go over the three rules again, but yeah, if you follow the three rules, it will change your whole way at looking at Go in general, and so that should help you significantly. But let's finish this. So move 102, the computer still has you up, right? The computer still says you're winning at this point of the game. And it wanted you to split white apart. If you attacked white, you could gain profit. Excuse me. So in the game, you played this, and then you left it. But actually, if you peeped here, this would have actually been really strong against these white stones and strong against this. And so we see if white protects himself, then we can play this because there's still the threat of you cutting here. And then there's the threat of you cutting here. And so this is really nice, powerful cutting technique. And then at this point, now this was a computer variation I got because I knew there was a better. I knew this was wrong, what you played in the game. But I wanted to check with the computer to see what the best result was. But the computer wanted you then to split these two groups apart, both A and B. And because B as a whole is becoming significantly weaker, you can attack this whole thing and make profit and come out with life most likely. So I really like this idea, but I like this shape point a lot. It's almost like hitting the head of three stones. If you check out the shape lecture, the shape will come to your mind, right? Because if this white stone was a third stone, it would be like hitting the head of three stones. But anyway, let's cap this review. So nothing big. So if we go through the rest of the game, we can see that nothing big was killed on either side. As Olip said, so Olip gave you some advice in the game, I think, or after the game. He said you focus too much on territory in the opening. Um, the explanation that I gave about bunkering down, this is what he's talking about, right? In handicap games, we do not focus much on territory. We focus on strong groups, weak groups, how to attack, and so that's really important. So make sure you use the three rules I suggested with your handicap games, right? Use your handicap stones to fight. Don't bunker down. Don't use them to make territory. Use them to make your opponent uncomfortable. Keep pressure on them, right? Make them move where they don't want to, and you move well, like with the kick. Keep pressure on. Keep the pressure up. Separate your opponent's stones. Very important concept. There was many opportunities where you could have kept your opponent split by moving between them, but then you would bunker down and then they would connect to each other, right? And so keeping your opponent split, super important to understand. If your opponents are split, then they're weaker, usually on both sides, and then you can attack one or the other. And keep your opponent small. So the idea is you can crunch your opponent a lot to make them have small territory. This didn't come up as much in this review, but these first two rules came up quite a bit, right? Um, so just quickly, the kick is a very useful tool when you have a stone here, for sure, because they're crunched, right? This is rule number 3. You're keeping your opponent small. Rule number 1, you're keeping pressure on them. So very good combination of rule 1 and 3, actually. Bunkering down, never, ever, ever do this again, ever. If you have the opportunity to run between your opponents to split them apart, then you should definitely use them. This is kind of like a double-digit Q way to do it. It used to be good, but now the computer really likes this pressure, keeping the pressure on, right? Because this helps split white anyway, so I like this move the best. Learning shape, understanding the fundamentals of shape is important for any Go player. It is a 100% must. So, please find some materials to study shape. There's a few books out there, of course. The one that I used to make all my lectures were all diagrammed straight from the Making Good Shape book by Richard Bozelich. So, you can check out that book and watch my lectures, and they'll help. Keep your stones connected. That happens a few times in this game where you should have kept your stones connected and you didn't. This attachment is good, but then when you bunker down with B instead of splitting with A, it became bad, right? Because now you're starting to get hemmed into the corner. His stones are starting to connect up to each other, which eventually they did, right? Which is bad for you. So that breaks rule number 1 and 2, right? Use your stones to fight, don't bunker down. And number 2, keep your opponent split. So in this case, like splitting here would have been good, or maybe something like this. But yeah. Okay, and then this is a very important fundamental that most people don't understand. Even at my level, I see them mess this up at almost the 1 dan level. So creating 2 weak groups is a big fundamental no-no because now white just gets to split you apart, right? Something we've been talking about this whole game, and then you become weak on both sides. And that's mainly it for this one. All right, we're gonna move on to the next. Sorry that took so long, but lot of new stuff to cover. Stuff that maybe you knew, maybe you didn't, but I can see the fundamental problems, and we can work on the fundamentals. All right. So everything I said about the rules, the 3 rules, apply them to this game because they're essential. They're gonna help you, right? These rules, they're meant to help you with every handicap game you ever play. And in fact, by learning to fight like this, because the whole goal of handicap games is to learn how to fight, your fighting ability will transfer to your regular games eventually. All right, so let's start. So as I noticed, you've been using the kick in your recent games, so I think you have this idea down because now white's very small and uncomfortable. This is wrong. I don't know why there's not an A, B here. Maybe I didn't need one, right? But this is wrong. And you did this a few times in this game too, right? Like I remember you did it around here. It didn't attach, but it was similar. And then around here, you did it once again. White approached your corner, and then you came from this side. So this idea just doesn't work out too well, especially when you attach. And so we're going to talk about a very fundamental rule that is going to help you with every single game you play ever, because this happens every single game, no matter what. And that is the golden attachment rule. If you attach to your opponent, it will help them get stronger. It will help them get stronger, right? Once you touch this stone, you have 3 liberties, and white has 3 liberties, and it is white's next move. So white gets to take advantage of being next. And so now white has significantly grown in liberties, and you're still at a small 3, right? And so this rule of touching your opponent will only make them stronger. That's not usually good. The time to use that is defense, which, you know, I'll just do another plug because I focus on teaching double digit Q players. So another plug into that is I've been doing the attack and defense book by James Davies. And specifically, chapter 4 covers all defense, right? So if you want to check out my channel, same name, Baduk Scholars, or with a B, but it's pronounced with a P. Um, Learn to defend, right? This is very important. This is a very important concept. Please check it out. I think you can find them in my playlist. I have a stupid amount of playlists, but the double digit Q classes, these you'll be able to find the Making Good Shape series. You'll be able to find the attack and defense book. Anyway, the point is that we use attachments for defense. We do not use them for attacking. If you're trying to attack your opponent with this move, it's only going to make them stronger. So instead, it's better to come through with the corner. So something like this would look nice. It's almost like the kick again. Um, or you could just make more territory here. Or you could attack these 2 stones, right? You can come over here and start pressuring these or something. But anyway, all right, let's move on. Golden attachment rule, very important to understand. So you did play over here, but now that you've already attached, it's better to just stay stronger. Because now these 2 stones with this is a very strong group. Um, so if we play like this, white is starting to feel pain on this side, right? Because the stronger you get, the weaker this becomes. So white jumps out here. Black then hits the shape, right, making this weak. White jumps out, and then you hit the break the tiger's mouth, right? You don't want to get hit on the head here. And so this is a really nice pattern of stones, like flow of stones. But yeah, playing here would have been much better. Yeah, white got stronger, black should too. Staying strong splits the 2 white groups. Very important idea. You could argue this is, excuse me, a bunkering down move, but it's okay. It's just not my favorite. I'm not. It's kind of hard in this position to run away. Maybe something like this would have been better, Or you could stay light like this, right? You can give up this one stone, but then you can stay connected with this stone. Right, we can see that we give up that stone, but then we disconnect these two. We're keeping separate this and this and this. So anyway, let's see. So this is the grievous mistake we see time and time again. The idea of bunkering down into a corner. This is a very, very small amount of points. So we do not use our handicap stones to bunker down. Instead, playing something like this would be really nice because now you get stronger, right? And so you're keeping these two groups split, which makes this one weaker. The other one the computer really liked was any moves in here. Any splitting moves here would to help this weak group would is better. But this move is very, very, very bad. It's so bad. It's we've talked about why it's bad, but I hope you can feel now why it's bad, right? Because White's now connecting his groups, which is making himself stronger, which makes this black group a lot weaker. And same thing, so at this point, weak groups, keep them in your thoughts always, right? The idea is that this group doesn't have enough space to make two eyes yet. And so I think coming out like this, or let me see if I pinpointed any other move. I didn't, but just coming out in general, the computer really wanted you to play these moves in particular, specifically this one. But something like this would be nice too. You're making good shape. This is called the dog face shape. And then it's attacking these two stones. So I really like this move here myself. But this group is very weak, and so you have to keep in mind of it being weak. By playing on the opposite side of your weak group, you're pushing white to attack this more. And that's essentially what white did, right? Was get stronger, which then weakens this. White moved on. This was, yeah, I think this is fine. You're keeping your stones connected. That's good. You're kicking, which is also very good, right? You're keeping pressure on your opponents, making them small. I think all these moves were good here. I think every single one of these moves were good. I might question this one a little, but I still think it's good. So I think you did a good job down here. The problem was this, and so we talked about attachments earlier, and so once again we're here at the attachments, right? One of the keys is to not touch the opponent's stones that you want to attack. Touching stones makes them stronger, right? If you needed defense, then it's okay, and feel free to check that, class out because it will help. Um, but in this case, it's much better to play this move because now you can see this move is directly hovering over this weak group, and it's directly hovering over this weak group. And what are we doing here, right? We're separating our opponents. We're making both sides weak. Very, very, very important to make both of these sides weak. And so this would be far better. And so if white pushed and you got pushed, and white pushed and you got pushed, if white's trying to save these stones, you can see you're growing stronger here, which is effectively attacking this group very severely. Like if white just once again jumps in one move, you could argue that these stones are dead. And this is a huge chunk of the board, right? If we look at this as a chunk of territory, this is really big. So a really cool concept of keeping your opponent split and not touching your opponent to help them. That makes a lot of sense. Same with if white tries to fix himself this way, well now we can just attack this directly. Yes, this is touching the stone, but it's keeping your stone stronger, right? Now you have way more liberties. You have more liberties than white does, so This would be good. All right. Let's see. White just made as much territory as possible, or much space as possible, to then make eyes. Now, I don't know how you felt in this case, but I would feel this was a big success for black. White's invasion was helped by this stone, and so now white has a pretty big chance of living here, which white did, right? Um, but what I want you to feel successful about is, and most double-digit Q players don't, because they feel like their territory got taken away. But remember, we're not using our stones for territory, right? This game's mainly about learning how to fight and attack. And so you did roll number 3, which is to keep white small. By sealing in your opponent, you're keeping your opponent very tiny. This is a big success for you, believe it or not. So I really like this outcome, even though, you might be questioning it. So finally, this is where even up to 5 to 3Q, I see a lot of people make mistakes, which is the idea of direction of play and evaluating the board and finding your most important groups and moves, right? So looking at this board, the most important parts of this game is here and here. And the reason I find this so easy is because this is a weak group. It's a liability. It has a chance of dying, which gives white a lot of points. So this is a priority on the board. It's one of the most important parts of the board. Computer kept still wanting you to play this. I don't know the perfect variation, but you can clearly see that this move is separating A and B, which is sticking to our rules. And so it should weaken one or the other side. I think that's the idea with this. Um, so this is one of the most important parts. The second most important part is this one, right? We're looking at another weak group, and that weak group is white's weak group. So here's ours, and here's white's. So just within one move or so, you can make this very hard for white to make 2 eyes in here, right? This is going to be very difficult for white to make 2 eyes. Now it can get a little scary. Maybe I'm not playing the most optimal way. Maybe it would be better to play this and then here. But you can see that white can't make 2 eyes. You could make this eye false, although white would get out, so it would be obnoxious. If you can't kill white also, then you can do what you did here, right? You can seal white in, and so you're keeping white small. In this case, white only made 5 points, maybe 6, 7, 8 points. In this case, white would make 3, right? And so black has all this power, which is making points here, which is making points here. You can see you're making more points than white. So the idea of keeping your opponent small is very important. So in one move, you can attack this group very severely. And so that's that concept. So these are the 2 most important priority, moves on the board. And so playing something like this just feels it's not in character. It's not what you should be doing, right? And so it's hard. This is a hard concept for players all the way until like almost one dawn. So I know where you're coming from with this, but I want to make you aware of it. I don't expect you to master these skills in one review, unless you're a genius. But introducing you to these high level concepts, I think, is gonna get you thinking about them at least. But anyway, yeah, so keeping your eye on what's important. Weak groups. Your weak groups and your opponent's weak groups. These are what's going to help you figure out what to do in the game. What's the most important objective? Where you should be playing. But yeah, playing this was too slow. This once again feels like a bunkering type move. I think playing something like this would be better. Yes, white has a lot of freedom to do kind of what white wants, but once you play something like this or like this, white's gonna start dying here, which is gonna lead you to quite a lot of points. So I like this idea more than this one. But to be fair, this is probably unjustified. I didn't write it down because I wasn't completely sure. And thinking back and looking at this now, even though this feels like a bunkering move and that's what's causing me to not like this, this does create the kick and you have a stone here. And so this is actually still pretty good. You could even attack this thing as a whole, and then white only has one way to go, which is this way, right? And so, you know, if white keeps trying to go this way, you then get to split these two groups, right, and cause a double attack. So this kick might be better than what I thought. It just looks like you're bunkering down. That's why I didn't like it at first. So this idea of keeping your opponent split, I like it. This move doesn't feel right. And I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to stay connected. But instead, you could have played something like this first, and then hit the stone to get stronger, and then you can make shape. And so now, white has to decide if white wants to connect or not, and I don't even think white can, right? Like, if white plays this, you can disconnect. White plays this, you can disconnect, right? And so there's and if white plays something like this, you can still disconnect. So there's this nice disconnect when you make good shape. So this is called the table shape. You can learn it from a different variety of places and ways. All right. Let's see. So in this case, you gave up some stones. I don't think this was particularly bad. This move was unnecessary. You could make the table shape here, or you could make the bamboo joint. But this move, all you did was increase your sacrifice, but it didn't help you, and that's the problem. Let's see. Once again, this happened in your last game too, where you devalued the idea of keeping your stones connected. Um, you know, I would say that we definitely need to keep our stones connected here, because when we do, this group is stuck inside and is very small, and you're very strong, right? You can see that your walls are all facing this big area, which is going to be worth a lot of points. But by playing this, you allow white to get a Panuki, which is this shape. This is the name of the shape is a Panuki. Um, and white is out, right? White gets out into the center, which hurts your territory and helps white. So it was really bad to do that. So to prevent that, you could just play here. When he ataris you, you connect. And there's nothing to worry about with this group. He can't get you, right? You're fine. You can get out. You can make shape like this, the table shape. Once again, you can see that these shapes keep coming up, right? Table shape. Because they're good shapes. They're good ways to stay connected and play. Let's see. You did it again here instead of connecting, but anyway, it wasn't as bad because the damage was already done. B here once again creates that empty triangle shape we talked about. It's inefficient shape. So, like I said, immediately when I look at your games, working on shape is a next step for you. Understanding how to become a better Go player is definitely working on your shape. So this was interesting because now you're in trouble in a life and death situation. But the funny thing is, you are stronger than this group. So instead of playing in here, if you just play down here, if white was to try to link up or do the same thing that it was doing to try and make two eyes in here, then you can just turn and kill these stones. Right? These stones are going to die faster than your stones. And so that's what's called the capturing race, and it's really nice. I like this idea of just, you know, let them live in the corner, right? This would allow white to live here, but you got all your cash, right? You got the capture in this big area, so it's fine. Instead, you chose here, and it gave white some good opportunities, if I remember. I mean, it was just okay. You ended up getting the special move, and so it worked out for you. But it looked dicey. It looked like overcomplicated. Move 156. Okay, so that's the main last thing. Like, there was a lot of little things here, but we've covered so much. I'm sure your brain is filled with all sorts of new things that you could try. Like, this death is painful. I can see it. And then finally, it was here that was so painful. So let me just see. Ah, yes, this move was really bad. So when you look at black here, black's fully surrounded. Black's gonna die. There's nothing that black can do to save these stones. And so playing this move looked really bad because it did nothing against white. The white just ignored it, and then it just gave white an extra stone. So instead, if you played here, now you have two eyes indefinitely. But if you allow white to play this move, which white eventually gets. Oh, I suppose too. You could have also taken these stones. But then you would need to come back anyway, so you can take these stones for sure and then come back and play 3. But after you let white get here, now you can't make two eyes, right? There's no way to make two eyes because you can't play here, you can't play here, and so you're in trouble. And so now, once you lost this, that's when the game changed and white took the lead. But if you stayed alive up here, this would have been enough points to win the game. But once white took this, then white had enough to win the game. So bunkering down, weak groups, and don't touch weak stones, right? Do not touch weak stones if you're planning to attack them. You do want to touch them if you're defending. That's a whole nother concept. You can check it out in my classes. But the most important concepts from this game is the bunkering down, weak groups, and don't touch weak stones. Super important fundamentals to understand for pretty much any game. I hope this helped. We'll recap again, just very, very quickly. Golden attachment rule, we talked a lot about not touching stones we want to attack, right? Because they get stronger and then you're behind a move, so then you actually became weaker by touching your opponent. So not good. Yep, white got stronger, so black should get stronger and then keep these opponents split. Keep these stones split. Bunkering down, right? So this is really, 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 really bad. You do not care about these points. You want to use these stones to learn how to fight and attack. And so we will keep these groups split apart, which will make them weaker and allow us to attack them, right? Let's say if it went like this, well, now we can really attack these stones, right? We can really attack these stones. Um, so keeping your opponent split, very important. That's rule number 2. Rule number 1, bunkering down is bad, right? We want to use our stones to fight. Weak groups, always keep them in your thoughts, right? In this case, you're weak, so you should strengthen yourself. You can strengthen yourself by making more liberties and by splitting your opponent, which will then attack them, right? If white played something like this, you can kill these. If white comes out, you get to come out, and then both these sides are still very weak for white, so you're doing a good job. Oh, yeah. Keeping your eye on what's important, understanding this weak group priority, evaluating the board and figuring out what the best, most profitable moves are. You can find those by looking at your weak groups. So if you have weak groups, you should protect. If your opponent has weak groups that are more value to kill, then you can attack them, right? It all depends on what you want. But playing something like this is off topic. It's not what's important right now. What's important is these groups here. You can make better shape with something like this. Preventing the Panuki is huge. This happened twice in both your games, and you shouldn't allow your opponents to just capture you and get out into the center, right? Like, this is clearly you should protect this. Allowing this to die was very painful and very good for white. Let's, white is weak here, so let's show him how much, right? Let's show him how weak white is here. And that was mainly it. Life and death, living and dying. So that's it for these reviews. Really hope they helped. The first one that I went over was very important. It covered the most important ideas possible for handicap games. So please keep these in mind. Keep these rules in mind. Try them out. You'll be beating your 1K friend in no time, to be honest, with 9 stones. With 9 stones in these rules, I don't think you could lose to most people. You gotta just practice them. It takes time. Um, that is it. Yeah, I know I said that like 3 times. Last but not least, feel free to contact me if you're looking for a permanent, well, not permanent, but if you're looking for a stable teacher or a tutor, whatever you want to call me. I do lessons, so let me know. And if you want to check out my free stuff, it's all on my Twitch and my YouTube channel by the same name. Paduk or Baduk is the Korean term for Go. So Koreans, Go scholar pretty much. Specifically, the double digit Q classes will help you significantly. You can find those in the playlist, the double digit Q classes. And then it covers a lot of my old ones, which had like problems in them, which is fun. Some of them are really important, like how to deal with the Sanrensei or Chinese opening. This is an excellent video. Learning Fuseki pattern, like the points levers, is nice. Lots of fun stuff in these classes. But some of my best ones is the specifically like good shape analysis. Good shape analysis. Super fundamental for any Go player. And then the attack and defense book, is really good. And so check them out. I'll end the recording here. I'm always bad at signing off, like leaving the recordings, but hope that helps. Take it easy.